guys, welcome back. So as we talked in the previous segment, we went sturgeon fishing this week. And we had a little bit of success. We ended up putting 11 fish in the boat, which kind of, talking to the fish checker when we got back to the dock, it sounds like we were pretty successful compared to everybody else. Like I talked to you guys in previous episodes, one thing I do when I'm targeting sturgeon is stay away from that deep water in the Columbia River estuary. You do not need to be fishing 60, 70, 80 feet of water. We put 11 fish into the boat, 7 were oversized, 3 shakers, and then this guy, he's 46 inches to the fork. No fish we caught was in over 4 feet of water. The last 2 fish we caught were in under 18 inches of water. One of the last fish we caught, my son caught a 5.5 footer, and that fish I would say was probably in 10 to 12 inches of water. So see those sandbars when they show up. One thing you'll notice a lot is if you see seagulls working those edges, you know, they're diving for bait fish. That's the same thing these guys are looking for, bait fish. Target those edges. We actually ended up, we fished a shelf along a channel. The channel was about 14 feet deep. The flat shallowed out at low tide. We fished on the shelf in about 3.5 feet of water for most of the last 2 hours of the outgo, and that's where we had our best bite. And then once the tide flipped, we moved back up on that flat, and we actually just drove, and friend of the show, Cody Herman, was fishing near me. He did the same thing, actually just drove our boats up as far as we could go, churning mud until the boat would no longer go. Dropped anchor there, could still see the anchor, and then started fishing there. So these fish do go in very, very shallow water. That's where they like to feed. Here's a couple kind of cool little things before I get going on cleaning this guy. For some of you guys that don't know, I mean, you can see I already gutted him. That's not a normal thing that I do when I clean sturgeon, but being that we caught him yesterday and I wanted to hold him over for the show, I didn't want to leave the guts in him for 24 hours, so I went ahead and gutted him. I have cut sturgeon open a lot just to open up the stomachs to see what they're feeding on. I did that with this guy. The only thing we found in him, really, he hadn't been eating a lot, but the little baby manila clams, and we see that a lot in sturgeon. Up in them shallow clam beds, sucking up those tiny little 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch manila clams, and they just swallow them whole. And I'm assuming that their stomach, you know, they can digest those and break them down and eat them. So as you can see, sturgeon are a bottom feeder. You know, they have this protruding mouth, that's what they swim along, especially like in those clam beds, and that's what they can just filter through that sand and take out what they want, whether it be sand shrimp or whether it be clams or whatever else they're chasing. Sturgeon also have, and hopefully David's getting this on camera okay, sturgeon also have barbels. Now, they actually use the barbels like a catfish, like these whiskers here. They actually use those to taste food. It's more of their sense of smell. And obviously, with the eye size, you can see on the sturgeon they have a very small eye, so that tells you that they can't see very well. So this is how they're finding their food, you know, is with the barbel and sensing it out by smell. They're not using their vision. And if you've been on the Columbia, especially fishing that shallow water, visibility is nil. I mean, in that 2 foot, 3 foot of water, I mean, you might have 3 inches of visibility. So, you know, painting sinkers, colors, and all that type of stuff, it's really not helping you all for targeting sturgeon. Another thing that sturgeon have that a lot of people don't know, some of you are familiar on sharks. Sharks have what they call Ampullae of Lorenzini, and those are little pores on the tip of their nose, and that's what they use to pick up electrical currents in the water, whether it be distress from prey or just fish swimming. And sturgeon also have that too along their nose. A lot of people don't know that. Sturgeon are very closely related to sharks, very closely. No bones, all cartilage, very similar to a shark. Now, sturgeon will too, and we've seen that on some of the smaller rivers in like the Willapa estuary I used to fish a lot. We would actually, that's where the bait wrap that I showed you guys a couple weeks ago in the bait lab comes in so important, because of the sculpin, or what we call them bullheads, that would attack the bait. We actually found out that if we would let the sculpin attack the bait and the tip would have that little vibration, those rods seem to get bit more than the rods that weren't getting by the sculpin. And I really think that that is due to that, you know, to the sensory, that they're picking up the vibration of that sculpin feeding on that bait, and they're coming along and they're just sucking it up. But let's get to cleaning this thing. So I start here. I start with the fish on the side, and this is kind of messy, but I run a 3-knife setup. I borrowed Dwayne's little fillet knife here. I'll just have kind of a knife that I don't really care too much about the edge. And what I want to do with that knife is I'm going to remove these side scoots. And I'm actually going to flip this fish around because I'm right-handed. So this knife, I'm not worried about the edge, and I'm just going to remove these scoots. And you got to kind of go at them a little bit. Sturgeon have very tough skin, and they are not easy to cut off, okay? And then I'll just roll the fish, and you just got to manhandle them. They're a big, slimy fish, so sturgeon slime is like no other. And just get those scoots off of there. Very first thing, while it's easy. You don't want to try to do this after you've filleted the meat off, okay? Now I'm going to flip him, spin him around again, and I'm going to take these scoots off of the back. Again, I'm going to use the knife that I'm not really worried about the edge, and just run right under that. They come off super easy, and just pop them off right there. My actual kind of funny story, my dog loves to eat these. I have to beat it. Just get away from me, quit eating them. Then I go to a boning knife. This is a very easy knife. I mean, you do so much with this. This is what I use to cut up all my deer, elk, everything else. You know, it's a $10 knife. Go get yourself one. You'll appreciate it. Come back here, right behind the gill plate. That's like armor. So right behind that, and make an incision right down behind the fin. Go around, kind of work around that last scoot of the head. And then this is going to be, for you hunters, this is going to be almost identical to taking the back strap off of a deer or an elk. You're just going to work right along this cartilage backbone. Just run this knife, making sure you're staying on the side of the backbone that the fillet you're working is on, and just take that all the way back to the tail. You're just going to continue to make that incision just like you would on a back strap. Work your way down. Run that knife right down that edge, working that fillet down. Cleaning that edge a little bit, getting down. And so now you can see I'm getting down here and I'm starting to get into that gut lining. This is where I have to slow down just a little bit. Like I said, normally this fish would have guts in it, but this one does not. But my goal here is, unlike a salmon, I want to take this fillet off without leaving that gut lining, okay? I don't want that gut lining to end up on this beautiful fillet. I want to leave it off. So I'm just working down until I can see kind of those rib bones on the cartilage. You can see right here, got a little bit deep. You can see that gut lining, so I just slow down a little bit. Make sure I'm making an incision that's keeping that gut lining out of it, and just slowly working across here. I mean, I guess I call it slowly. I mean, some people may think I'm going fast, but there's that gut lining again, working so I stay off of it all the way down. As you can see, I'm getting down to the bottom end of the tail. This is kind of, you know, it starts to darken up here. That means you're in a good spot. Continue to go with it. And you'll see now I'm down past the belly and I'm getting to that skin at the bottom. That's where we want to be. Right there. Now I'm just going to take this fillet. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to go right above the scoots. As you can see here, here's the belly scoots. I'm not going below them, I'm going right above them. I'm going to leave those attached to the fish. And like I said, the fact that it's gutted actually makes this a little trickier. I won't gut it again before I do it, but we're going to make it. We're going to go around the fin, and then once I get around the fin, I flatten my knife out and I just roll right to the tail, okay? And so I would just repeat this on the other side. You guys have seen it once, you don't need to see it on the other side also. Okay, so I'll slide this out of the way for time purposes. And so now you see, I have this perfect fillet of meat here. I got a little bit of the gut lining here, nothing major. I'm gonna go to my third knife. Now I go to the long bladed fillet knife. First time I've broke it out. Let me get some stuff out of the way. Making a mess. I guess it's, normally you're doing this outside with a garden hose, and in between every step you're hosing all this junk out of the way, but we can't do that in the bait lab. This is kind of a little trick. So now I gotta get this skin off. I'm gonna take my knife here, I'm gonna kind of pin it down. Be careful not to cut yourself, and I'm just trying to get an incision started here that I can get my finger through, okay? now I've got it started to where I have something to hold on to. What I like to do here is take your knife and poke just a little hole in the skin. Because it's a super tough skin and it's very difficult. Now I have a handhold. I don't have to worry about this skin slipping out of my hand. I have it. So now I'm gonna bring the fillet right to the edge of the table. The reason I come to the edge of the table is I need to get this knife as flat as I can against the skin so that I don't leave a bunch of meat attached to the skin. By taking the knife to the edge of the table, I can now get my hand below the level of the table so I can stay extremely flat. Instead of, if I was out here like this, you can see how high my knife is, probably an inch, inch and a half off of the table while I'm holding my hand. But getting it out to the edge, I can get the blade right up against the edge of the skin. So again, using that finger hole, sliding in, and then it's basically just kind of working the knife back and forth very easily. And I'm just kind of, as you can see, I'm just kind of a sawing motion with the knife, but very gentle. And I'm also doing that with the skin at the same time, just kind of working back and forth, keeping the angle of that knife so I'm just sliding right above the skin. And get to the end, and I'm off. And if I did a good job, I roll it over. And as you can see, I maybe got a little bit high there, but everywhere else here, I did really good. I'm always proud of myself when I roll a fillet over and I've cut it to where I see none of this pink fat right here. The pink fat, not tasty. You do not want to eat this pink fat. So I take my knife and I just, again, you're just taking your time, very slowly, working until you trim all that pink fat off. So you just continue to work that fillet. And then if you want to get really picky about it, you cut this section here off, and then I've actually at times lay your knife in there at a 45-degree angle, kind of work that seam, which I'm assuming is probably the lateral line of the fish, if sturgeon have a lateral line, but I don't know that. And then you can also get most of that out. But I mean, you really want to get this fillet down as close as you can to being a pure white piece of fish. Minus, you'll see kind of on this, you see this marbling in the meat. As the fish get bigger and bigger, I've seen this be a bright pink, I've seen it be a neon orange, I've seen it be a yellow. It really, the color of that fat that goes into the meat can change with each individual fish. But I don't think that that negatively affects the flavor too much, but this stuff right here. So you work to get most of that off, but that's basically the process of cleaning sturgeon. And then this carcass right here, absolutely phenomenal crab bait, phenomenal crawdad bait, and it used to be really phenomenal 7-gill bait, but they don't let me do that no more. So that's another topic. Maybe we can talk to Tom about that in the next segment. But that's how you clean a sturgeon, guys. Take this home, fish and chips, fry it up, bake it, poor man lobsters. There's so many great ways to prepare sturgeon. It's a great tasting fish, but remember, you're out this weekend targeting sturgeon. You don't have to be in that big deep water. You can stay shallow and have great success. So that's it for me in the bait lab. I'm gonna throw it back to Chef Kelly and Sherry in the kitchen, and they're gonna be whipping up that chicken fried steak. I can't wait.